Good, mate. No, that's not it. Hey guys, what's up? Ugh, no. Hey YouTube. No, generic. What is up, my homies? That one just doesn't work at all. Howdy, y'all. Let's do some art. Yep, that's the one. Let's get ready to Norman Rockwell this thing. If you don't know who Norman Rockwell is, shame on you. All right, welcome back to the studio today. Thank you for joining me. Let's talk about Artstudio Pro and why it might be a great alternative to some of the other digital art programs out there like Procreate, specifically when we're talking about drawing on an iPad or similar digital tablet. All right, as a digital artist, there's a lot of really great tools available to us today for just creating art on multiple types of devices and softwares. And a lot of folks are going to have preferences one way or another. I myself, when it came to digital art on an iPad, which is I started on an iPad, I didn't do it. I didn't have an Android tablet or anything like that, so I actually just started with iPad apps, and I started with Procreate, which is a really great program. It has a lot to be desired. It has a lot to love about it. It's simplified. It has, a pretty intuitive user interface and stuff like that, and it's kind of just a broken down or streamlined sort of app that is easy to understand for most people if you have sort of an introduction to digital art to begin with, especially if you came off of something like Photoshop or something like that. When you get on the iPad, which I love drawing on the iPad, trying to render on the iPad can be a little bit tedious with your brushes and your layers and your details and stuff like that. It's totally doable. It's a great platform for that. Your pencils and pens and stuff like that, especially let's talk about the iPad and the Apple Pencil. They don't have the greatest control and precision as what you would get like on this Wacom tablet or something like that. But programs like Procreate made it a much more attainable drawing apparatus, really, is what it boils down to. So when it comes to drawing on the iPad, even with the lack of detail and stuff like that, like you really can't get as much detail with the Apple Pencil and stuff like that, and as much control. Procreate and similar apps made it a much more tenable and viable art studio that you could carry with you everywhere. That's the beauty of an iPad or similar drawing tablet, is that you can carry it with you everywhere. But Procreate, to me, was kind of lacking a little bit of the depth that I was used to in Clip Studio Paint and in Photoshop. So I started poking around with different apps, and I stumbled across Artstudio Pro by Lucky Clan, and as of right now it is only for iOS and Mac OS. So they actually have a desktop version, which I did download, and I'll cover that in a different video. I've been playing around with the desktop version, which I just only downloaded last week or two, and it leaves a little to be desired, but I like where they're going with. But back to the iPad itself, to the actual iOS version, once I started digging around in it, I really started to enjoy and love how much the tools and the layers and stuff like that really had to offer. Our user interface open here. So the thing I really love about Artstudio Pro is it more closely emulates Clip Studio or Photoshop, something that I was used to. When it comes to layering, layer effects, color wheel, all that good stuff. The brush library on Artstudio Pro is amazing, and I think compared to Procreate it offers a little bit more, and I liked the way the brushes behaved a little bit better in Artstudio. So instead of just trying to compare this Artstudio Pro to Procreate and say which is better versus the other, I'm going to give you my take on Artstudio and why I like it better than Procreate. The brush economy for Artstudio to me seemed a little bit more streamlined. I'll start with the brushes. They seemed more streamlined but more capable, if that makes sense. They're easy to navigate. There's a lot more that they offer within the program itself. If you look through erasers, inking, airbrushes, all that stuff, they have a lot of similarities to Procreate. But I found the ability to manipulate the brushes was a little more detailed. You could get a little bit more control over some things. You could get a little bit more influence over how they behave. And I like that. I like being able to do a little bit more than what Procreate offers. Without getting too much in the weeds on this versus this in Procreate versus Artstudio, I'm just going to get into Artstudio and show you kind of a workflow and why I enjoy it versus Procreate, where I would bog down in Procreate. And so I'm trying to find some things, trying to find some tools, trying to find some ways to do some things that I wanted to do or get the effects I wanted to do. I found that in Artstudio, I liked the user interface better, and I liked the capabilities of it better. And it shares a lot of the same similarities, such as file management, file exportation, file importation, layering, brushes, and overall capability as an art program and an art studio, I guess you could say, for your digital mobile device. So let's create a new file from empty. Just go new empty. I'm going to go in here to one of my preset document styles. So 11 by 14, let's go with that. I like working at 300 dpi, 11 by 14. Let's create that bad boy. You come up with a blank. You look in your layer palette right here to the right. It's really user intuitive. You've got options for adding layers, for adding groups, adding masks, and duplicating layers, for merging layers down, and layer effects here. You can edit your effects. You can do your normal type of things you would do in Photoshop with multiply, color burn, linear burn, darker color, color dodge, all those wonderful things. You have all of those same capabilities in Artstudio Pro. And you can jack around with the pigment on your layers. You can actually manipulate pigment to it or add pigment to it. That one's a little more complicated, but let's just go straight to a drawing layer. And I've set myself up a favorites button here with a couple of my pens that I've manipulated, or brushes that I've manipulated to my liking. So I like to draw with the art pencil. That's one of the brushes I found that works really well for sketching and stuff like that. It gives you that kind of loose, large size. It does have tilt sensitivity. So you've got tilt sensitivity and you got sharpness on the edge. When you dig in like this, you're more sharp. When you tilt, you got more of that gradient effect. Your eraser is a very simple setup. You could go into basic. It'll show you your basic erasers, and you can manipulate and adjust them with your sliders here on the left for size and opacity, which I really like, because you can get all up in that real quick right there in front of you, right on your user interface. And so there's not as much, I guess, comparing it to Procreate, it doesn't seem as much of it is as nested. Some of the manipulative, for your brush attributes and stuff like that, some of the manipulative things aren't as nested, aren't as hard to find, in some ways. You've got undo and redo, just like you can do your 3-finger tap, 2-finger tap to undo and redo and that kind of stuff, same as Procreate. Your brushes, you can pull up your little brush library here and you can actually manipulate your brush here and set your blending modes and your drawing modes and all these good things right there on the spot. If you go into the actual brush library itself though, and go to your brush that you're currently working with, so let's pull up the pencil brush, and I'm going to go with art pencil. If you tap on it, it actually brings you to this nested manipulation interface, so you can start messing around with how your brush behaves. And it's really easy and super uncomplicated to change your brushes, to tweak them to your liking. And again, a lot of this is just personal preference, is how I like to work as an artist and what I found personally that worked for me better. There are some things that Procreate may do a little bit better, and I'll cover that. I'll do an actual versus video one day of Artstudio versus Procreate head to head and see how they work, do a painting. We'll do that one day, but today is just an overview of Artstudio. Let's do a little sketchy sketch here. I love the eraser in this thing. All right. Let's do struggle bus here. Let's get on to a head. This is my art pencil, so I actually have an art pencil 10 point. That's what I work with most of the time when I do my sketching and stuff like that. And I have done some fairly large pieces in Artstudio of work, and fairly detailed pieces. Actually worked predominantly for almost the last 2 years. I've done most of my work in Artstudio. My digital work, because my computer set up, my Wacom I had in a box because we moved and all this good stuff, and so I didn't have my actual digital art studio set up for almost 2 full years, and so I was relegated to working predominantly in Artstudio, and I really loved it because it was mobile. I could take it with me anywhere. I'd take my iPad and I'd go around and do whatever, traveling and stuff like that for knife shows or whatever other things I was going to see, family and stuff. It was like, I love working digitally, that's just my jam, and being able to be mobile without having to lug a computer around is awesome, which is one of the main benefits to working on an iPad or similar device. You can get Android devices, and the XP Pen has a device now too that do this kind of thing. There are limited options when it comes to your drawing applications though on those type of things on Android and stuff. They have great ones, they have great options, but they're kind of limited, and you don't get Procreate or Artstudio, which is unfortunate because they are really, I mean, of all of the ones I've played with, because I played with Infinite Painter, which I enjoyed, but all the ones I've sampled so far, and I've, you know, all the pick one off the list, I've probably sampled it and downloaded it because they're inexpensive enough. But these two are the ones that I go to the most, and of those two, Artstudio I find myself in more than anything. So got a little elfy elf going here because why not? That's just how I roll. You've got all your standard sort of manipulative, intuitive kind of industry standards so far as pinch and zoom and stuff like that, and twist, and I love that. I love that about the digital space. You can zoom in, zoom out, twist, all that good stuff. So all that same kind of stuff applies in Artstudio. So let's just see where this goes. Let's get some hair on this critter. Got our eyebrows nice and aggressive. I'll work through this outline real quick. I just slammed this piece together real fast for a demonstration, but I'm actually using a glazer brush as one of my more favorite actual inking brushes that I've been kind of found and fooled around with in this program. Let's do some eyeballs here. Get these really quick. Let's see how fast we can put a piece together. That is not matching. Here we go. The glazer brush kind of has a soft edge to it almost, and a soft transition and end, which is what I really enjoy about it. Alright, as you can see, we've got our outline done more or less. We've got, you know, maybe some cleanup would be nice around the eyes here and stuff like that, but just a quick sketch drawing to kind of show the capabilities and the user interface of Artstudio. It's kind of struggle bus with the lines there, but we're just going to go for it. Let's put a layer below. I'm going to set this outline layer to multiply. I'm going to set a layer below, and let's block this bad boy in. Now you can use the painting brushes, digital painting brushes. The digital round, honestly, you can get away with doing just about everything you need to do with that brush, and it actually has a really good blending economy for making things look wonderful and smooth and creamy. If you want to lay down some hard color though, we're going to jump over here and we'll go to our basics, and nope, not it, airbrushes, and we'll grab this medium airbrush and boom, just slap in our hard color. You can bump the opacity, lower the size, and then it really works good for cutting in like this around the edges and stuff. Okay, if I had to sum it up, I would say my favorite thing about Artstudio Pro is versatility and capability. It seems to be more versatile than Procreate in a lot of ways when it comes to effects, brush economy, layering, you know, layer options, manipulative options within the user interface and stuff like that. And it just seems to be slightly more capable at a broader range of tasks that are more close to and more closely resemble something you would find on a desktop program like Photoshop or something along those lines, Clip Studio, that kind of thing. So those are kind of really the key points that make it to where I enjoy Artstudio better. I'm not saying Procreate isn't a great program. It is. It's a fantastic program. It's actually kind of the standard in the mobile digital art studio space. But I think Artstudio could catch up to Procreate very quickly in a lot of ways if it gains some traction and popularity and stuff like that. Now at the beginning there was some I guess you could say some quirks with Artstudio that were kind of frustrating with when it just came to file management and saving your settings and all those things. They hadn't quite worked those out at the beginning, and I wrote a couple letters to the to the creators, and I know others did as well, about some of the things that were frustrating about the way the interface worked, and just saving files and saving your setups and your presets and all those things as you're going about working, versus when you'd close it down, and whether you could use it offline or online, because you couldn't use it offline at one point. And that was very frustrating. I mean, that was a non-starter for me. So I abandoned it at the beginning, and I went back to Procreate and just worked on that for a while. But then after writing them, and then Lucky Clan did a really great job of responding to their customers. They really did. They respect and responded to their customers in such a great way, to fix those quirks and make them work, make the user interface and make the program itself work better for mobile artists. You can see in the picture here, I'm just breaking this down real simple. We're doing a real simple illustration today, just basic line work with a basic brush setup that's almost basically the exact setup as what you'd find in as a default with the program. I might have tweaked the brush just a little bit, but I don't think I tweaked it a whole lot more than just size, like saving my size preference and putting them together up in my little star there for my favorites palette or whatever, so that I had kind of a brush set all ready to go. I can just pick and choose and go for it. The inking brushes work really great at doing hair, as you can see I'm doing right here. They really work great at kind of giving you that flow and that that sharp edge and stuff as you're sculpting hair off of into the nether regions of space, when wisping it out, so to speak, into the air. So that's an inking brush I'm using there, and I use my other just standard drawing brushes, airbrush to fill in, and a painting brush. All right, so here I'm starting to add some simple highlights using a soft airbrush, just kind of working. I mean, we're talking, this is a basic illustration. I've probably maybe spent 30 minutes on this thing's tops, so not super detailed, and I'm not going to get crazy in the weeds with it. Just identifying some quick lighting sources, like, okay, my light's coming from the light up high, and it's kind of a stark contrasting or a very bright light, where her face is mostly in shadow. So that's what I was going for here. So just picking out midtones and lightening things up a little bit, adding a little bit of color into the like the specular highlight, or not specular highlight, but the subsurface scattering on the ears and stuff like that, and around the cheeks where you're more flush and a little more blood comes to the skin. I'm not going for a super realistic skin tone here, just kind of an anime-ish or cartoony stylized look. Now I switched over to the hard airbrush, hard medium airbrush, because it kind of has a harder edge to it, and so you can more define those edges where light meets dark, where it does need to be more crisp, more defined and less dispersed. Now when I get into painting, I'm just going to use the round brush. This is the basic digital round brush from Artstudio, and I'm going to do the rest of this picture with that or the bristle brush. And it's great at laying down color. It's great at laying down hard swatches of color and swaths of color, but then if you lighten up your stroke, you can really blend really well with it. You see the finger, or you see the color picker there comes up if you just tap and hold your finger on the screen, which is also a great thing that I really love. Occasionally may get a little bit of palm swipe and things like that with your hand if you're not careful while you're working about your canvas. So I wear a glove generally, and that helps keep from palm swiping and double tapping and all these crazy things that can happen. But I love the finger tap, and you can adjust this. You can adjust all of these things I'm talking about. There are user settings within Artstudio that allow you to adjust it to your preference. So you can do double taps, you can do triple taps, you can pick your finger up your nose and stand on a foot and make it do a thing. So I've got mine set to, if I just tap and hold, I can pick up a color and move on about my canvas. Then I can drop my color picker down if I need to adjust that tone or adjust the depth and the saturation, and go to another color with it. So it's really great to do that. And the pen itself, you'll see me pull up a menu occasionally in the middle, and I've got my pen set on my Apple Pencil set to where if I double tap it, it pulls up a little quick menu in the center of the canvas wherever I'm working, and I can set those buttons within that menu to all manner of different things. I've got it for flip canvas, I've got it for locking and unlocking pixels, locking and unlocking layers, I've got it for deselect, transform, all those wonderful things. And that, like just those kind of usable aspects of navigating and manipulating your workspace as you're going and on the fly are much better than Procreate's in a lot of ways. You can set your pen up so that you have user interfaces. You can draw it right up in front of you. You can tap, boom, it comes up, and you can switch it around. And you can set your top bar up to where you have all these different, tools available already out there. So you can customize the user interface a lot more than Procreate, which I really, really like. Like, I love that. I love being able to pull specifically the tools out that I want for the way that I work. It's got an auto save feature too, so that's also really great, whereas Procreate is always kind of saving in the background. Artstudio, you kind of have to save it. You can save it yourself as you're going, and it also has an auto save built in. All right, again, just picking simple colors here, really just loosely defining my color space, my shadows and highlights on this image using the round brush and pretty much nothing else. And you can go a long ways. I'm working on 2 layers. Generally, I like to work on 2 to 3, maybe 4 layers. I usually go with a line art layer, and then I go with skin tones, and then I go with anything and everything above that, so far as costuming and hair and all that stuff. And I like to keep things separate personally, because it's just the way I work. It makes it more easy for me to work on each layer individually instead of trying to hit the whole piece overall and going back and forth. I kind of have a OCD tendency for lines and organization and structure, where some people can be more loose and crazy and flowy with it and just kind of let things go as they do on a single layer. I've never been great at that. I've never been great at just single layer painting. I've tried it and it works great in some ways, so far as just if you establish a single layer full of paint and then you establish an entire value layer for your shadows and highlights, and then you add color to it afterwards, working from grayscale up, it works really great for that. And I'll demonstrate that in a later video, but it's not my strong suit. My strong suit is kind of keeping things separate and just organizing things in a separate manner so that I can, work on each part of the piece individually as I go. All right, I'm just doing an overlay layer on these ones, or a clip. You can clip a layer to the one below, just like Photoshop and stuff like that. And so I'm doing a dodge layer or a screen layer here, I believe, to just highlight things a little bit and bring the highlights up. But yeah, it's color dodge, clip to the layer below. Just picked a random color close to the skin tone and started color dodging. I'll go up to the hair layer now. Same thing. I'm gonna identify a multiply layer, clip it to the layer below, and go for putting in my main, with an airbrush. This is just a soft airbrush. I'm going to just start painting in kind of my broad strokes of shadow for this layer. And then I'm going to take so after this step, after I've kind of identified my main shadows, which hair is not my strong suit. I kind of struggle bust with hair, and it'd probably do a lot better if I used reference for things, but I also struggle with reference, and I will cover that in a different video for the reason that it is. And it has nothing to do with a pretentious belief that you need to create everything from scratch out of your memory, because I do not believe that. I believe reference is a huge tool that artists need to use. You need to learn how to use it, and I'm personally working on learning how to use reference better to make my images better. So I do use it occasionally, and I almost always have to go find something to reference one specific aspect of some painting or another. And I think when it comes to anatomy and hair and stuff like that, it's a huge benefit to you. All right, so here I just broke out the digital painting bristle brush, and I'm just slapping in some colors, some darker colors with the shadows and highlights and all that good stuff for the hair. And this brush is really cool. It actually behaves a lot like a digital or a traditional painting brush, like an oil painting brush. It really behaves well that way, and it has a great blending mode. This is the pure default mode. I did nothing to it. And it really behaves wonderfully because you can lay color down. It's got a little texture to it, but you can also blend really, really well too. So this is a great brush. I really love the bristle brush, especially when it comes to hair, because you need a little more texture. You need a little more less cleanliness when it comes to the hair, because it's a messy part of the body. So just going through shadows and highlights, I'm going to start smacking them in there with this brush. All right, so I've got my deepest, darkest parts in there. So now I'm going to go back and start trying to give it a little bit of highlight and see how that works out. Just paint it in there. Just slam that highlight right in there and go for it. Rimming it around the head or the shape of the head. You're kind of just trying to capture the shape of the head. This brush is great for this type of thing because you can go back and soften up and blend things with it too without ever having to switch colors or brushes. All right, just do a little bit of highlights here. Let's do some little bounce light, you know, little specular highlights, little bounce light, little reflections, just to pop it out a little bit. This may not be the most realistic looking thing, but it's a cool effect for kind of illustrative artwork to just pop in some really great highlights, specular highlights or bounce lights coming off the environment around the character. And it works better if you kind of do them in the color of what is reflecting off of that side, but I didn't really establish a background. I didn't establish an environment for this one. So we're just kind of going with the basic generic highlight scheme and bounce light scheme. Rim light, all that good stuff. Oh gosh, it's starting to look like Sam does art. I'm coming for you, Sam. That guy's so talented. He really is. He's a very talented young man. If you don't know who Sam Does Art is, I highly recommend you look him up. You want to learn some stuff? That guy's a good teacher. He's a great artist and he's a great teacher. And that's a beautiful thing. Because not everybody can be both. Sometimes people are really great at teaching, really bad at art. Alright, thank you for joining me again. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something, maybe to give you a little bit something else to think about when it comes to digital art programs for your mobile device. Whether that's Android or, in this case, we're specifically talking about iOS because it is Artstudio Pro versus Procreate being the two kind of top contenders for the iOS platform. Now on the Android out there are several other options. You can go with Clip Studio, which works really well on iOS and Android. I do enjoy Clip Studio for mobile drawing studio, I guess you could say, on a device, but it's a little bit more complicated and it's a little more busy, especially on a small, if you're doing just a small screen like this. Mine's at 11, I think it is. iPad Pro. So if you're doing something smaller like that, the Clip Studio can get a little bit busy. So working with a simplified program, with a simplified user interface like Procreate or Artstudio can really enhance your workflow on such a small device. So thank you for joining me again. Hope you tune in next time. If you wouldn't mind, leave a like or a comment below. Let me know what you think of this content and if there's anything else I can clarify. If I can clean something up for you, maybe show you a little bit more on Artstudio Pro. Lovey-dovey. Love it. Oh crap, what a disaster.